other vehicles there in the sighting. I just want to double check. They do know that I'm coming. I'm just going to stop here and just make sure that it is okay to approach. Yeah, stations with Shadow and Bantuan, may I approach? Or there are 3 vehicles there. Okay, copy, thanks. Now, there are 3 vehicles in the sighting. And it seems as though we're going to need to just wait our turn before we go in. So I'm actually going to pull back out onto the road and do a bit of a loop and wait till we have an opportunity to join these leopards. And obviously it's very, very important that not only everybody has their turn, but also that we don't have too many vehicles putting them under pressure in the sighting. So we're just going to pull out for now. It seems as though there was somebody else on the list who's just made their way into the sighting. So we're going to leave them for now and come back in a moment. Now as we make our way out, it has been a very, very warm day here in South Africa in the Sabi Sands, and there was a question from David as to what we do in terms of protecting our skin and whether or not we wear sunblock and what sort of factor we need to use. And it is a particular subject that I know my mother in particular worries about in terms of making sure. And she's always been very, very conscientious, both of my parents, about teaching me about sun safety. I just took my hat off earlier because I needed to not have it blow away while we were driving here. But we're a bit more sheltered, so I've got it back on. And typically I'll have, say, factor 50. Around factor 50, possibly even with my moisturizing cream having a bit of sunblock protection in it as well, and reapplied fairly regularly and as often as possible. As you will have noticed, I'm actually quite fair-skinned. There's somewhere in there's Irish and Scottish genetics that haven't created a skin that was built for intensive sun exposure, so I do need to be particularly careful. I'm just going to stop here and see exactly what's happening with this leopard sighting. Let's pause for one moment while I have a chat with one of the guides. There seems to be some confusion on the radio as to who was going to come in first. Hello. How are you?
Good, and you?
Good, thank you. How many vehicles are coming in?
You have to come in because you have to stand by again. Go in. Okay.
I can go in. You sure?
Yeah, you can go in.
Oh, shop man. Thank you.
I'll take a step back.
Oh no, shame. Are You can go and then I can come back. I'll head around and then come back.
Okay.
Yeah, Shop, you can stay and then just call me when you... Just give JB a shout. Alright. Shop, man. Thank you. I think there was some confusion on the radio. Cheers, guys. Now, I'm just letting the guests go in and have a look. A lot of them only have maybe 2 or 3 days to spend out here, and there was some confusion as to who was going to be allowed into the sighting first. So I've just taken a step back because we still have plenty of time left on the sunset safari, and then he said he would give me a call on the radio when they're done there. Let's leave it at that. I'm just going to loop around to a more open area so that I can tell you a little bit about my snake experience, or my snake experiences for the day. It has been highly entertaining. Also, still on the lookout for any exciting birds to show you. I haven't quite been on the roll that Brent was this morning. I'm still keeping my eyes peeled. And although the airstrip seems to be an odd place to come and look, you'd be surprised what you can find around here in terms of bird life, especially some of the rarer ground birds. Now, I did just want to stop and tell you a little bit about the snake experience that we had today, and it's all connected to do with the spring experiences that we've had. Oh, I'm just listening to the radio to see what's happening there. Okay, they seem to have organized themselves for now. Now, this morning started out very early with a red-lipped herald in the shower at Inger's that we first saw, and then a variegated bush snake, I think it was, or a spotted bush snake, to just outside the bathroom at the DRC where most of the rest of the crew live. Now, the other thing that happened to me this afternoon was I was having a nap. I was absolutely fast asleep this afternoon on my bed, and somebody came in to come and ask me something, and apparently this snake was on its way up into the bed. It was coming up over the pillow to come and join me in my afternoon nap, and as soon as the door was opened, it shot off under my suitcase. We spent a bit of time trying to get it out. It turned out to also be a bush snake, which I'm going to show you in a moment, because they are really beautiful snakes. Let me just see if I can find it. It was quite an interesting way to wake up. Where is it gone? Here we go. Show you a picture of what it looks like. Really, truly beautiful snake. And this was the little creature that had decided that it just wanted to have an afternoon nap as well. And the reason that we're seeing so many snakes is it's just finally reached that temperature, as well as just after the rains, that they can really start to become mobile again. But you can see how absolutely gorgeous they are, with these beautiful black spots and the big eyes. And those big eyes tell us a lot about the way that the snake functions and the excellent eyesight that it has. Now, to somebody who isn't as well versed in the different snakes that we get in this area, they're often mistaken for something called a boomslang, which is one of the most venomous snakes in the world, or at least in South Africa. Hold on a second, I'm just being called, I think, to be into the leopard sighting. Standing by. Let's see if I can start joining the sighting. Yeah, standing by. Copy that, thank you very much. Okay, so we can make our way into the leopard sighting, but those bush snakes are completely harmless. They are really, really not dangerous in any way. They're not venomous. They do have a very, very slight venom, but it's not something that is of any danger to humans. But they do look very, very similar to boomslang, which have drop for drop the most potent venom of any of the snakes we get out here. That takes quite a long time to take effect, somewhere in the region of 48 hours. It's a hemotoxic venom, so it destroys the clotting ability of the victim's blood. In this case, this is just a harmless, beautiful snake who decided that a nice soft bed would be a good place to spend the afternoon. Thirsty day today. Now I am quite glad that my nap was interrupted by somebody coming into my room to ask something, because I think that rolling over and discovering a snake in one's bed unsuspecting can be quite a nasty shock. And there is a chance, although it is slim because they're not very aggressive snakes, it probably would have just slithered away in fright, but there is a chance if I had rolled over that it might have maybe given a bit of a bite in response. Trying to find my best approach. Now, I will say, in case anybody is terribly worried about that encounter, that it is not that common for snakes to come into beds. I think I just got very unlucky. I was also very silly to be sleeping with the door open, so I won't be making that mistake again. I'll make sure that it's just the window that I have open. Now let's see what Shadow and young Madiba have been up to while we've been gone. that, Chandra? Is that
Slightly back.
slightly back? Here we go. And it seems as though Shadow has spent some time this afternoon sleeping off her full meal, or full belly, and is back to eating the kill that she'd made this morning. I'm just trying to have a look at what it might be. There's not much left. Here we go. Hello, Shadow. Now, I'm not too sure where Madiba is. I think he's around the back of this kill. Looks to me like a steenbok. I'm seeing a flash of red color there at the feet. Good. Let's try and focus my binoculars. Now that to me looks like impala even. I think Shadow might have successfully taken an impala down. Just double check that. They were looking very, very full, and that fur does have a very red tinge to it, which makes me think it might be an impala. And it's amazing to think that even Shadow, who probably is around 40 kilograms, is more than capable of taking down a 50 kilogram impala. Although Shadow walked all the way back from here to Voyatella to collect young Madiba and bring him all the way back here to share in her kill, when she was with him this morning on Brent's sunrise safari, she was showing quite a bit of aggression and occasionally growling and pulling a face at Madiba whenever he got too close. Ah, that's definitely an impala. Where is she going to take it? She might just be shifting it around to try and get a better angle for the meat. And Clarissa from Toronto was wondering, because she has joined the drive late, what Shadow was up to in terms of pushing Madiba away. So as I mentioned, she was showing quite a lot of aggression towards him whenever he tried to get closer and snarling at him, although Brent said that he did also have a go at her tail, which might have provoked a lot of that snarling action from her. At the moment though, she's clearly the one who's got access to the kill. I'm not sure if Madiba hasn't had plenty of time to feed this afternoon. I'm sure he has. And when we do loop around, we'll get to have a look at how full he's looking. He's just on the other side of this fallen jackalberry that's at the back there. She's munching away on her impala. There are quite a lot of vehicles coming in and out of the sighting. A lot of people want to come and see this, but luckily I think we're coming to the end of that, and very soon I think we're going to have these two to ourselves. And that is really, really good news for Shadow and Madiba, that she's had this opportunity to feed on an impala. That's a really good meal for the two of them, and they've clearly devoured most of it actually, so no wonder this morning when we saw them they were so fat and panting. They looked absolutely stuffed when I saw them, and you can see how big and round Shadow's belly is. Now Madiba is, as I said, lying just behind us, or just behind the fallen tree that's behind Shadow, so when I do have an opportunity I will loop around to see him, but it's nice to see her feeding on this impala. Interesting to see her plucking the carcass now. I think she's trying to break into a different part to get to a separate part of the meat, rather than peeling back the skin, as lions often do. You can see there, she's not feeding at the moment, she's plucking the fur away. Yummy.
No, that's the mother. It's not as big as the one that we saw earlier. Yeah, that one's like.
And according to many of the viewers as well, there's been a lot of sawing that's been heard on the Arathusa Dam camera over the last few nights. And that will probably be one of the males. I'll check up with some of the guides and see if they've seen any males around that area. Now I know that James actually had Kwetile very, very close to where we are now, and I think that was only yesterday. So it could have been Kwetile, it could well have been Shadow. I think that both Shadow and Madiba were both hanging out around Impala Plains for a couple of days before moving south. And I think we're probably only about 500 meters from where James had that visual of Kwetile, which goes to show how fluid leopard territories can be. And apparently Kwetile was also scent marking around this area, and she had suckle marks. So I'd love to know, it would be interesting to see the interaction between these two females, because if there are suckle marks it means that Kwetile has got cubs somewhere, is hiding cubs somewhere tucked away. It does just provide a useful lesson into the fluidity of the territorial boundaries of leopards and the overlap that will inevitably happen. We tend to think of leopard territories and lion territories like puzzle pieces with very set edges, but of course it doesn't work like that. Oh, lots of hair in her mouth. I love it when they do that and they try and clear it off their tongues. It's so funny. And once the other vehicle has settled in, it'd be nice to sit quietly and just hear the crunching noises that she's making. We'll just have to wait for the other vehicle to switch off. there she is, using those beautifully adapted molars to shear into the flesh.
Yeah, the young one. Sometimes
Now, Kathy, and I'm sure many of the other viewers, have picked up on the little injury that Shadow has underneath her left elbow on her front leg. And that was almost definitely, looking at it now, it's very fresh, and that's almost definitely from this kill. I would say I'm 90% certain that this happened while she was trying to kill this impala, especially because they are quite a large prey species. She's not the biggest leopard out here, and probably caused by, as we were talking about before, how sharp antelope hooves can be. It could well have been caused by a kick. I can't tell if this is a male or female impala, so I don't know if it has any horns. But that was probably caused by, I would say most likely, a kick, and 90% certain it was caused during this kill. But don't stress, because it's not deep at all, and animals are incredibly resilient and they heal very, very quickly. I don't think that's going to cause her any disadvantage at all. You can see in the way she's moving, it doesn't seem to be hurting her in any way. And a little bit earlier we saw her plucking away the fur. She's now fully, properly feeding on the carcass. But earlier she was just plucking hair away and licking it, and you all saw her pull that incredible disgusted face and pushing the hair out of her mouth. And Donna wants to know if leopards cough up hairballs in the same way that domestic cats do. And welcome to the Sunset Safari, Donna. It's great to have you. They do indeed. I have seen them do it on the odd occasion. Not that often. You can see how much they tried to spit out. Oh, something's... No, back to feeding. Not sure if something caught her attention or she was just taking a moment to lift her head up and make sure all was okay around her. You can see how rapid her breathing is. That is one full leopard. She's panting away. Combination of the raised metabolism to help her digest the meal, as well as the fact that her stomach is so full that it is actually pushing up against her diaphragm, leaving her less space to breathe. It's not going to stop her though. She's going to keep scoffing away. Going to reposition slightly because somebody else has just poked his little head up as well. going to get a clear view from here. Let's see if we can... She's tucked herself away a little bit into the thick block. But look whose head is coming out over the top of the tree. There's Madiba, and he's come to investigate. Hello, boy. I really enjoy this leopard. He's become such a character, and he's so full of fun and mischief. He's also panting heavily. He's obviously gorged himself as well. I don't think he's feeling terribly hungry. He might even... Oh, no, he's going to try and come through and see what his mommy's up to. You can see already she's showing that irritation that we were talking about before. It was instantly in response to him. There you go, and again. And that is very interesting to see. How defensive Shadow is getting over her kills. And that is definitely, as far as I know, not something we've ever seen Shadow do. Except for this morning was the first time we'd seen it. And that is the first signs that she is starting to expect more independence from young Madiba. She's still happy to go and fetch him and bring him to a kill and look after him, but he's no longer to be tolerated feeding next to her. Now, I know that this view is not ideal, but at least we can get to see where both Shadow and Madiba are. Now, unfortunately, there's a vehicle in front of me and a vehicle behind me, so at the moment, we're going to stay where we are. Obviously, all of the guests really want to get to have an opportunity to view these beautiful animals, which we're just going to wait for now. But you can see Madiba's got half of the impala on the left and Shadow has got half of them on the right. And that interaction was revealing in terms of what is happening with the mother-son dynamic. She's definitely feeling a bit grumpy towards him. Shame. Poor little boy. Must be very hard to understand when that happens. Now, you can see, in the time that we got to see both of them, you'll see that the entire kill is on the ground. And Angela was wondering why Shadow hadn't hoisted it into a tree around, or at least into a better tree. Originally she had it in a guari bush. Just want to see if I can get around. Yeah. I'm just waiting for one of the vehicles to pull out and then we're going to loop around and reposition so we can get a slightly better view. Oh, no we're not. How are you? Good, thanks. see if maybe there's a good position we can get into where we can view both of them. I think we're going to struggle for now. Let me try and out a little bit. I'll put our side on for now and then we'll loop around. We are going to have a chance to reposition in a moment, but for now you can get an idea of the distance between mother and son. And I know in the past Shadow has something of a reputation, just to get back to Angela's question about hoisting the kill into a tree. She's sort of tucked it into the guari bush, and I think there's, in her defense at the moment, there's not much in the way of options in the area that we're in without having to drag quite a heavy impala, which would be probably around her body weight, quite a distance to find a nice big tree. And putting it up into the fallen jackalberry that's behind them would be fairly futile, wouldn't keep it away from any of the scavengers out here. So I think in this particular case, they've had a chance to have a really good feed without being interrupted. But I think a heavy impala, a good 40 kilograms or 50 kilograms of impala, might have been too much to drag to a large tree. But Shadow does have something of a reputation of being very bad at hoisting her kills, and they very often get stolen by hyenas. And I'm not sure if that is because, or why that might be, or if it's something that we're going to see follow through in Madiba's behavior as he starts to become independent and make his own large kills. Now I mentioned that it would be interesting to see what kind of technique young Madiba adopts over the next few months, and Jilly from Milwaukee was wondering, or wanted me to explain in a little bit more depth about the different leopard hunting techniques and whether or not, or how much of it, I suppose in essence, is learned and how much of it is instinctive. So what is it that has made Shadow reluctant to hoist kills when her mother, as far as I know, her mother Karula certainly was never, and was very often recorded with hoisted kills? And will Madiba follow his mother's example? And it's a question that I can't answer with absolute certainty. I would say that there's components of both instinctive and learned behavior in this particular case, because Shadow clearly didn't learn this from her mother didn't do it, but maybe because she became independent a little younger as a female cub, maybe she just something that she adopted. And maybe, there could even be a biological reason that we're not aware of. Maybe there's a tooth weakness that means she struggles to grip and pull a kill up a tree. I know that she has been seen with small kills like duikers and steenboks up trees before. Maybe she has a sore dew claw on her foot We just don't know enough about the situation to know the reason behind it. But then in terms of what Madiba is going to do, I couldn't begin to predict. Personally, I think he will start hoisting his kills. I think the fact that he is as large as he is, he's already much bigger than his mother, he's showing much more strength in the front of his body. And I think it's entirely possible that he would start to hoist his own kills when he does eventually start to make the bigger kills. But it could also be that he just needs to learn by losing some of them first. I can hear the bones crunching of the impala as Shadow chews on them. And I share Tina's sentiments that it's absolutely incredible that we're getting to sit and watch these wild animals as we do, and how privileged that we are that we get to share in their lives. And for anybody who is joining us or is new to these safaris, this is live. So this is happening right now on Arathusa Game Reserve. We are sitting with 2 leopards, a mother and her just over a year-old cub, whose name is Madiba. And we've been following his story for months on end. And if you do have any questions that you'd like to send us, or any comments that you'd like to make, you can do so on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@WildEarthTV. And the coolest part of it being live safari is that you just never know what's going to happen. And a lot of the time, neither do we. And it's so amazing to start to see this behavior from Shadow and her irritation and lack of tolerance towards her young male cub. Hello, big girl. Where are you off to now? Are you coming to lie down? I think she's coming to have a bit of a wee and to defecate. We saw that flash of irritation from Shadow when young Madiba went to go and share some of the kill. And Cheryl, you were a little bit concerned as to whether or not he got to eat a lot of the kill as well. And although Shadow has been showing some irritation, just have a look at that absolutely enormous belly that young Madiba is sporting, and you can be sure that he has had plenty to eat. Now, Scott, James and myself were out this morning, and we were actually very close to finding these two. We did a lot of tandem tracking with one of the Chitwa trackers, and we tracked them all the way from Gowrie, Maine. And Susie Johnson was wondering, do we know for sure that Shadow brought down this impala? Now, judging by the tracks, I would say almost absolutely. The tracks went up and down. The first set was just Shadow's, and she came all the way from here, walked all the way to Gowrie, Maine, obviously called young Madiba, and he came bounding out, and they then walked back up the road together. So their freshest tracks were coming up from Impala Plains, or from Gowrie, Maine. And you could see he was going backwards and forwards, but not consistently. He was just playing. So his tracks went backwards, forwards, up and down, side to side. You could see where he was pouncing out and jumping on his mom. Whereas her steps were very deliberately. She had gone to fetch him, and she'd come back with him, and she'd led him straight to where this impala kill is. So I would say, Susie, that I would say I'm 90% sure that Shadow did take down this impala, and she is responsible for it. How he looks thoroughly round at the moment. This is probably one of the roundest I've ever seen him. And maybe even Shadow was showing some irritation because he'd actually pushed his way into having the best parts of the kill, and she got tired of it. Now, we do have this sighting to ourselves, and we get to pick which leopard we go and see a little bit closer, and I'm actually going to pass that decision on to you guys, because Shadow is all the way off to my right. She's just laid down just behind the vehicle, and obviously Madiba is still there chomping on the impala. So who would you like to have a better view of? Would you like to stay with Madiba, or would you like to go and see what Shadow's up to? And I think for now, let's go backwards a little bit, just because we have got this lovely view of Shadow, and we actually don't get to see her all that often. And she was the one who was responsible for providing young Madiba with this meal, and she is nice and out in the open. And I also want to have a look at one of the observations from this morning. Apparently she does have some missing incisors, which is something I've never picked up on Shadow before, so I really want to just go and have a look. Oh no, let's just wait one moment. Let's see what he's up to. What you doing, mister? I think he was just shifting around for a different meal position. As he's munching away at the impala, Stephanie from California, welcome to the Sunset Safari. Now, you were wondering if Shadow's earlier irritation or lack of tolerance towards Madiba is a result or evidence of the fact that she might have conceived after mating with Tingana and the Anderson male. That thought did go through my mind. I'm just doing rough calculations, and I think it would probably be a bit early for that to be the case, although definitely if she was pregnant she might show a little bit of increased irritation around him. That being said, even if she was pregnant and she did give birth, she wouldn't necessarily push him out of the way or out of her life completely. I'm still wondering about what the chances are that Shadow's actually fallen pregnant, or what the chances are of conception, just because she did come into estrus so early. And to be honest, I don't think we know enough to really give you that information for certain, or at least I certainly wouldn't claim to. In terms of her irritation, I think it's part of a natural process. I think we're going to see it more and more. She's still going to come and collect him and take him to kills, but she isn't necessarily going to be as tolerant as she always was, and that is a natural part of the process. He's not young anymore, he's not small, he's bigger than her, and even in his boisterous play attempts, he could even be capable of hurting her slightly. So she does just have to, for her own sanity even, show a little bit more firmness with him, and just make sure that he's starting to remember, just like you, maybe if you've raised any teenage boys yourselves, or teenage girls, whichever, you have to be just that little bit more firm with them, a little bit stricter as they start to push the boundaries. I'm going to shift back slightly, and let's see if we can get a nice view of Shadow and her post-meal wash. do it nice and slowly. Interestingly, she is almost more, not skittish, she definitely isn't a skittish leopard, but she's almost less comfortable with the vehicle than young Madiba is. I'm not going to push any further just because she did stop what she was doing, so I'm just going to let her relax again. Here we go, just having a bit of a wash after her meal. And I'm very happy for both of them. That is a nice substantial meal. Now, this is a leopard that I happen to have a tremendous amount of respect for. This is the first time that she's ever managed to raise a cub past the age that Madiba is currently at. Sorry, let me try and rephrase that. This is the first time we've actually seen her raise her cub to the age that Madiba is at the moment. And she's lost somewhere in the region, or at least that we know of, she's lost 6 litters. And that is almost certainly due to the fact that she has had some rather rotten luck. And it's a very hard life out here, being a solitary female leopard trying to look after and raise cubs by yourself. Now, she's managed to do incredibly well with catching an impala like this. It's made for a very good meal, and they both will be going into the night with very full bellies. Now, in terms of how often she'll need to hunt and feed him and how often leopards eat, it depends on how much they have managed to get to eat. I don't think that these two will need food for probably somewhere in the region of another 3 or so days. The big cats have an amazing ability, both lions and leopards, to really gorge themselves on whatever they're eating. But they do have very, very fast working metabolisms. And they'll probably need a meal every 3 or so days, but they can be up to a week in between feeding times. I really also have a soft spot for her, probably because her son is my personal favourite leopard. Not that you should have favourites, but you can't help it sometimes. Sindile is just coming through. Not Sindile, Madiba. He is dragging the kill along. Now, I know that most of the viewers have said they're quite keen to stay with Shadow, just because we have spent quite a lot of time with Madiba in the past. But let's just see him trying to to tug the impala this way. What you up to, boy? And I think natural instincts kicking in here about trying to move it into thick cover. And he is coming to irritate his mum. Just going to keep a close eye on her reactions as well. Sure. Oh, that's exactly what he did. He tucked himself as deep as possible. Here we go. Let's see how Shadow reacts to him. Oh, all is forgiven. Bit of affection there between mother and son now that food is not involved. And that's nice to see. Very, very happy to see that. So that's what I mean by the fact that this is going to be a bit of a general process. So Madiba becoming independent and learning some independence will be a process of a gradual process, and it will start in situations that involve food, because for these animals that is where the most antagonism will come in as part of their survival. In all things, it's always either eating or mating that you will see the most aggression from these animals. So we'll see the most conflict between Madiba and his mother over food, but they're still going to be affectionate. We must still remember that she did come and fetch him. He really is an extraordinarily good looking leopard, this one. He's catching the various bugs and flies that are moving around his head, or trying to anyway. He's snapping at them. Just going to shift backwards so that we can keep an eye on both of them, what both of them are up to. Let's just shift around and see what they're both up to. A really special sighting actually this evening. We get to see both the start or the beginnings of Madiba's independence, as well as the fact that there is still that mother-son bond. Just making a nice wide loop so that I don't cause any disturbance. Spend a little bit of time with Shadow. Madiba has moved off again, back to where the other half of the impala kill was. It's nice just to spend a little bit of time with her. Still trying to see those incisors that were mentioned, but just have a look at how incredibly rapidly she is panting. As we zoom in on her mouth, you can see her neck moving there. Oh, excuse me. I apparently shouldn't try and breathe and talk at the same time. Now, I've mentioned that this is the first cub that Shadow has raised to this age, or that has survived, and that she has lost 6 cubs, or 6 sets of cubs previously. And John Sherman was wondering how many cubs she can have at one time. Now, John, typically the average for female leopards is around 2, but they can have 3 as well. I'm just trying to think, I read somewhere about a very unusual case of 6 being born, but that is the absolute exception and highly, highly unusual. That was the world record. But that generally the number sits at an average of 2, occasionally 3, and sometimes even 1. Hello, beautiful girl. Well done. Now, if she is pregnant from that mating, having a quick wash. The nice thing about leopards is that they are quite fastidious in terms of cleanliness. And that's important if you're a solitary animal, because you have to keep your scent hidden. Hey, you're off to, big girl. She's making her way back to where she left the impala, or part of the impala. Now let's reposition. The little one is just tucked here under the bush, so I don't want to scare him away. Not so little one, actually. Bigger than his mom now. Stop and have a look at him. What he's up to. Now, an impala kill, compared to, say, a steenbok or a duiker kill, which is probably about half the size, is a really, really good meal for these two. And Ramon, you were wondering how long it will keep them fed. Now, they've munched quite a lot of it. There's still, I would say, maybe 20% of the meat left, maybe a little bit less. However, they do have limited time left with this kill. So because Shadow hasn't hoisted it into a tree, and unless she does so fairly quickly, I'm already starting to catch whiffs of it. Especially because it has been such a hot day and decomposition is sped up in the way that it is. And if I can smell it from here, that means a hyena a kilometer away can smell it fairly easily. So I would say that it is almost certain, unless they get very, very lucky, that unless Shadow hoists this soon, they will lose this kill tonight. And they'll probably eat until they are completely stuffed and then move off, maybe even go off in search of a drink, although leopards are not as water dependent as a lot of the other animals out here. But I would not say that if we were to come back here tomorrow morning we would find anything. My prediction would be that it will be gone. Especially because I'm not sure if you were watching the sunset safari that we did the other day, but we stopped at a hyena latrine on Arathusa, and that's probably about 500 meters from where we are now. So they are moving through this area regularly. My goodness, that was a very, very full leopard cub. Let me reposition. A nice view of them once again. It's so nice to see them so well fed. I'm not sure when they last ate, but this has definitely come at a good time for them. And I will say that whatever Shadow's perceived faults, I have never seen young Madiba looking particularly hungry. That might be because he's starting to hunt for himself. Okay, let's just see where she decides to go before I pick an exact position. Shadow is stopped here. Giving me the runaround today. Tucked away behind the bushes. And sorry to interrupt your ablutions, Mr. Madiba, but he's just having a quick urination. You can see, not spraying backwards as an adult male leopard would do. He's still squatting down to urinate. Still a baby. Not showing any signs of dominance, which of course is going to take him probably somewhere in the region of 4 to 5 years before he even thinks along those lines. He's going to lie down and sleep off some of that fat belly of his. I cannot remember ever seeing him quite so full. Now, if there are people joining us for the first time, as there so often are, this is a live safari, so what you're seeing is happening right here on Arathusa Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands, and we are looking at a male leopard cub who is just over a year old. He is with his mother on an impala kill. His mother's name is Shadow. She's a 9-year-old female and already much smaller than he is. And it is always great to hear that there are new viewers, and there have been a couple of remarks at how relaxed these leopards are around vehicles, and questions as to whether or not the spotlight bothers them. And the answer to that is the Sabi Sands has a fantastic history of very careful guiding practices, which has allowed these leopards to become as relaxed as they are. And it's a state of exposure that has been taught as well, passed along through the generations. So mothers teach their cubs to be relaxed. And it is so important in terms of their survival that they are relaxed enough that tourists can want to come and see and view them and get to share in this time with them, and then of course invest in the money that is so necessary to protect them in these conservation areas. Now, in terms of the spotlight, I'm making sure that I don't shine the bright beam directly in his eyes. It is filtered, and you can see he's happy enough to look up. Now, I would not be doing this with any of the diurnal or the daytime animals, but for the nocturnal animals, they have very well adapted membranes at the back of their eyes called the tapetum lucidum, which bounces back any excess light. It gives them fantastic night vision, but it also means that they are not seriously affected by the spotlight, although I wouldn't be shining it directly straight into his eyes. You can see he's not blinking, he's not squinting. He's quite happily looking off in the direction of the light. So Monique, it is great to have you as a new viewer. Welcome to the Sunset Safari, and I do hope you'll be joining us for the future safaris that we have twice a day, every day. And the wonderful thing about these live safaris is that we do get to follow the stories of the various characters. So as I'm sure many of the regular viewers will tell you, we've been with young Madiba, or following young Madiba for months now, and following his growth from a rather ungainly leopard cub to a rather ungainly, slightly bigger leopard cub, who is now much more playful and much more independent. And if you are a new viewer and you are joining us for the first time, please let us know. It's fantastic to hear from you. And then we can also give you a little bit of background into what it is that you are watching. Where are you off to, young man? Still hear Shadow crunching away behind me. So she's still around. I don't know where he's off investigating. Away from the skin of a carcass, which they very often do. You'll see them start to lick around. You'll see both lions and leopards do it, lick around where they want to break into the kill to start feeding. But they also use it to get meat away from bone. Once they've chewed away some of the larger pieces, they can use it to pare the meat away from bone. So very, very effective at the way that they eat. Now young Madiba has settled down again. He's lying down. I just want to see if we can spend a bit more time before the end of the sunset safari with Shadow. I've just heard her cough, so I know that she's still there. Let's see if we can reposition to see her for a bit. Oh, hold on. The little one's up and about again. I just want to keep an eye on him for now, just to make sure he doesn't disappear. Shift around so that we can keep up with him and see where he is going on his nocturnal adventures. Somehow I think with a belly like that he's not going to be going too far. Okay, he is lying down again. I just want to see what Shadow is up to. Got her feeding away again on the impala. That was the crunching that we could hear. Let's see if we can just listen for a moment, and though she's pulling at the skin, but we can hear the sounds of her feeding. Now, we have been experimenting with different radio techniques, so I think that this next question comes from Red, but forgive me if I'm getting that wrong, it's not too clear. But you wanted to know if it took me some time to desensitize to seeing kills like this, and how do I feel now when I sit with them or when I see them. I've always had quite a pragmatic approach. Nobody ever wants to see an animal in pain, and I certainly was known to my parents when I was younger as being very, very soft about it. I hated seeing any kind of animal suffering, but I'm also aware of the fact that if we want to get to see these incredibly beautiful animals like this, that it's part of life that we just need to accept and move on from. Now, I've seen a couple of kills, and I would never describe it as fun per se, but it is a fascination that is there at the way that these animals operate. And though it can be very distressing, at the moment I feel quite comfortable with the knowledge that it is all an entirely natural process. And it's always wonderful when the babies start to come through, the baby impalas, and you start to see new life coming through. As well as the fact that if I really sit and think about it now, she could well be currently feeding up her body to bring new cubs into the world. And that's a really, really important part of this whole process. But that's not to say that I don't feel bad for the animals suffering. I would say that I feel far, far worse if I see an animal that's being killed in some way due to either human error or human fault. That is a situation that I definitely have not in any way become desensitized to. But when we look at this beautiful predator that nature has created, it's all part and parcel of the same process. And she is so perfectly adapted for this life that she lives. And I'm actually really enjoying getting to spend a little bit more time with Shadow. I've spent quite a lot of time with her son, and he's highly, highly entertaining. But it's nice to see and get to have a look properly at her. I'm just thinking what it must have been like for her early this morning or late last night, after she'd put all of that energy into killing an impala. Maybe she stopped to snack on it for a bit first, and then she had to walk maybe 3 or 4 kilometers to go in search of her son, and then lead him all the way back here after having put all of that energy into killing something that is probably close to equal in her body weight. And then him jumping on top of her the whole time and being playful. I would say it's no wonder that she's starting to feel a little bit grumpy with him. Now, I mentioned that I think she's probably going to lose this kill sometime tonight because she hasn't hoisted it into a tree. But if there was a nice, appropriate tree for her to have hoisted it into, or to have carried it up into, she would essentially be dragging her own body weight, holding it in her teeth, and using her claws to pull herself and the kill up a tree. Which is something that we've sort of started taking for granted. We know that leopards pull their kills up trees, but how absolutely phenomenal is that in terms of strength? Now, Tina, you were wondering if leopards have a higher muscle mass than other cats, because they do that. Now, I'm not too sure in terms of muscle mass, but I do think that they must have very special muscle adaptations. And I've had a chance to touch a darted or anesthetized leopard in the past that was being translocated to a different area. And whilst I expected their muscles to be hard as iron, because that's what we think of when we think of people who do lots of exercise, they've got very, very strong, solid muscles. But in fact, the muscles were completely soft and floppy. And I think that's just because they have a completely different muscular cellular structure to the ones that we do. In terms of muscle mass, I'd say pound for pound, they are incredibly strong. Just bear with me one moment, guys. Somebody's trying to get me on the Game Drive channel. Standing by. Copy that. I think I will pull out. I'll be pulling out of the sighting now. No, negative, definitely not. Now guys, we do have a very interesting update on the radio. What's the position of those Ngala? Whereabouts are those Ngala coming from? Now, as much as I would very much like to end the show here, I've just been called by one of the guides to say that there are lions on their way up, almost directly in this direction. Now, because we're sitting with our spotlight and we're talking next to the leopards and we've got the smell of the vehicle, there's a chance that we could actually jeopardize their safety because we're drawing attention away from their alertness to the area around them. So what I am going to do before the other vehicles get too close is I'm actually going to pull out of the sighting straight away. We're not going to, obviously we do not want to in any way endanger them. Good luck, girl. Be safe. Now, I've been trying to get hold of the guides to ask which lions and where they are coming from, just so that I can choose my way out more carefully. Good luck, little boy. Pulling out of the sighting immediately because I can actually see the vehicles, the lights of the vehicles that are approaching with those lions. This pathway away from the leopards. They are approaching from the south, so close to Shirley's. Unfortunately, it is a 3-vehicle sighting, so I can't go and have a look at them, but it sounds as though it was the Birmingham boys on their way through. I know that they were on Mala Mala. I'm going to head back onto the road. Now, in a situation like that, it's really, really important that we show a level of respect to those leopards and make sure that we don't do anything, obviously, to jeopardize their safety. And you can see how the guides were concerned as well, because they were getting my attention on the radio. So for now, this is how we are going to end our sunset safari. Fear not, the leopards will be fine tonight now that they're not distracted. And a big thank you to Jean-Andre for all of his hard work and to Nikki and to Lou in FC. And we will see you all tomorrow morning for the Sunset Safari. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.